So, let's talk about how to get those perfect snow tones. So many people have been asking me after my recent vlog I made, which if you haven't seen it, you can watch up there. Many people were asking me about how I got the snow to look so good. And this is a hard thing to get right, especially if you take into the account that if you're not shooting raw on a cinema camera, getting the right white balance is a struggle. For photos, you have that ability to adjust the white balance in post as long as you're shooting in RAW, and the same for cinema cameras that shoot RAW video. But for the average consumer and indie filmmaker, we don't usually have cameras that have this sort of capability, and therefore we have to make do with what we have. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you all how to get the very best snow tones and also skin tones in the snow tones at the same time in DaVinci Resolve. So let's take it on into DaVinci Resolve, and once you've dragged your clip into the timeline, rescaled it, done all the regular adjustments you usually do, we're going to take things into the color tab. Once you're in the color tab, make sure you scale the image up and get rid of the LUT window, because we're not going to be using LUTs. That's right, we're not using LUTs. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that's going to tell you, go to the description, why LUTs? No, we're doing it from scratch. So the first thing that we're going to do now that we have the clip in the color tab is take a look at the clip in general. Is it too blue? Is it too red? This all depends on the white balance you shot, and that's something that depends on the situation, the lighting of the scene, time of day, and generally for the shots I was shooting it with a white balance of cloudy because it was a cloudy day and still snowing. However, the shots I took came out rather blue, which isn't a problem because we're going to fix that now. And the same techniques can be applied if you shot in a different white balance or in a different situation and it looks a bit red. So the first thing we're going to do is obviously adjust our exposure. You're going to go over to the Curves tab and you'll see the general exposure of your image. And generally when you are shooting, you want to shoot overexposed rather than underexposed, because if you underexpose your snow shots, it's going to look rather muddy and kind of depressing. I personally enjoy bright snow, even if it's just a little bit overexposed. You have that detail, that brightness that kind of represents snow, unless that is you want a muddy look with your footage, or if it's the stylistic, choice you've made. So I'm just going to adjust my image a little bit with the curves, and then once I'm finished with that and I have a result I'm happy with, we're going to go into the third tab, Hue and Saturation tab. And there you'll probably see a massive spike in either the blue, red, or wherever the tint of your footage is. In this clip specifically, it is mostly blue. So you might see little spikes everywhere else. That's where the other colors are, and that's how much information they have. So really the thing to do here is desaturate the blues. So the thing I'm going to do here is put 2 points on the curves and then just bring it down to desaturate the blues. You might have to adjust a little bit to see if you need to desaturate a ton or just a little bit, because sometimes you have blue things in your shot that you don't want to be completely desaturated, or you can just desaturate them all the way, or add those other blue details back in a different node later. But once you get a result that you're happy with, you're pretty much done then. However, if you are in the situation I was, where I was vlogging, and you had skin tones in the image which are predominantly red, you might want to adjust that a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is go to the Nodes section of the Color tab. And the thing with the skin tones are, if you desaturate the blues, or really the reds especially, you're going to have some issues with the skin tones being desaturated and looking unnatural. And the shot, the white balance wasn't perfect, so my skin tones were slightly off. But this isn't a huge deal because we're going to fix that right now. Go into the node window of the Color tab. Right click on the node and go down to the section where it says Create New Node. Then there should be the serial node option. You could also do this by doing Alt and S at the same time. Now you'll have another node, and in there we're going to use the HSL tab inside of the Color tab. So on the bottom row of the Color tab there is many different things, and one specifically is the keyer icon, which is the HSL tab. You go into that window and you'll see the HSL window where you can key a certain color and isolate that color and create effects just for that color or specific area of the image. So what you're going to do is make sure you have here selected and click on the skin tones. Now, you're probably not going to see anything firsthand. You have to go up into the top left corner of the screen and hit the preview button so you can see what you're keying. If you click once, you'll probably only select a partial amount of the skin tones, which isn't the end of the world because you can just go to the key expander button and click another area of the skin tones that you know you need to add. And you can just do this to refine it, and if you have little blotches here and there, it's not a big deal because we can fix that by going down into the denoise section and denoising the image so it's not as harsh. Because if you don't denoise it, you will have these weird kind of blotches all across your image, and it looks bad, and it looks like you shot in 8-bit, which is exactly what I was doing because I don't have my studio license of Davinci Resolve because it's on back order and I can't use my 10-bit footage. But anyways, that's beside the point. We want to denoise that, and then you could, if it's still not working with the denoise, you can do the blur, and it probably looks really creepy if you're still in the preview and you're just seeing a face or some skin tones just kind of floating in the gray box. So you can probably disable the preview to see how the skin tones look after you've selected them, and then go back to make sure you have all the skin tones selected. So the skin tones have probably been altered if you've desaturated your blues or reds, depending on what you've done, or if your white balance was incorrect when you first shot it. So what we're going to have to do now is go into the waveform, or wait, no, histogram, no, waveform. Oh, vector scope. Is it called a vector scope? Yes, it's called a vector scope. So now in order to get the skin tones correct, we have to go into the vector scope, which in the bottom right corner of the screen, there should be an option to do so. Either you'll have the keyframe window open or the expanded HSL window. There should just be an option for your HSL or histogram. And there, once you open up the histogram, you don't really need this. You can use the histogram in other ways, but for this, we're going to go into the vector scope. In Davinci Resolve, when you're using the vector scope, you'll see a long line near the color red on the vector scope. This basically tells you where the skin tones should be, and you'll probably see a kind of blip, like a line that has like kind of dust around it. It looks like it's just telling you where the color information is in the parts that you've keyed with the HSL. And if it's not directly on that line, it might not be good skin tone. So you don't have to have it exactly on the line. Sometimes having it just above or just below the line, depending on the shot, could be fine, but generally you're going to want to adjust the skin tones until they're right on that line, so you can do that very easily. You can go over to the other side of the screen and adjust the hue of the clip. When you adjust the hue of the clip, you'll see the line move. Now you want to move it to the point where it's in line with the skin tone range, and you don't have to be perfect, but it's also good to check and make sure that the skin tones look good on the screen, because sometimes even if it's correct on the vector scope, it might not actually look good on your screen, which that might be due to the bit depth of the recording, 8-bit, 10-bit, 12-bit, 14-bit, 16-bit. That all has a bearing on how good it looks, but also specifically, you just gotta make sure it looks good for the environment that you're filming in. Now, if your skin is looking too punchy, too oversaturated, you can literally just lower the saturation a bit, or you can adjust the color temperature as well in order to get something that's convincing. Now, if you do saturate the skin tones a little too much, you're gonna see some weird things happen with like weird blotches on your skin, which that might be because of your bit depth again, but you can generally eyeball it until it looks pretty good, as long as you're on that right line for the vector scope. And once you're done with that, you can just turn the preview window off if you haven't already, and boom, you have your color graded shot. Now after this, all I'm going to do for my shot is add a bit of stabilization and a diffused highlights effect, which there are tons of tutorials on YouTube and there's many different ways to do it. My personal way to do it is just add a layer node and then add the Gaussian blur effect and then change the compositing mode to screen, which I could do a full tutorial on that effect if you wanted me to. Do leave it down below in the comments if you want to see that tutorial. And that is all for me today. This is how you take your snow tones to the next level. If you enjoyed this video, do be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I will be making many more Davinci Resolve tutorials in the future, and I have many more on my channel if you wish to check them out. My name is Rocco, and I'll see you next time.